Welcome to Story Time. I'm Stephen King. Beware the Boogeyman. Keep the lights on. Check under your bed. Close every closet, or you'll sleep with the dead.
Welcome to Now Playing Podcast review of The Boogeyman.
It's the thing that comes for your kids when you're not paying attention.
Part of the Stephen King movie retrospective series.
I think it's been around forever.
Hosted by Arnie, Stuart, and Jacob.
Our minds try to fill in the blanks.
This podcast contains detailed plot spoilers and harsh language. Listener discretion is advised.
Dad, you have to listen to me.
Okay, I'm listening.
Today we're discussing The Boogeyman, starring Sophie Thatcher, Chris Messina, Vivian Lyra Blair, and David Dastmalchian, directed by Rob Savage. This is the Now Playing co-host whose flame bends to the left, Arnie.
And Stuart. And this is the co-host who's been known to eat too much pizza and throw up in the ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese, Jacob.
Stephen King. We're back in the night shit collection with The Boogeyman.
Wait, you gotta retake that. You said shit by accident.
Yes, I did.
By accident, right?
You know what? I want to preface everything by just affirming something that probably hasn't been affirmed enough. I used to love reading Stephen King, and Night Shift is a huge reason why. When I was a kid, that short story collection was terrific. Start to finish. I loved them all. And it's just so ironic that the thing that made me love reading Stephen King is the thing that now makes me hate reviewing new Stephen King movies. Because the worst have always been from that collection, right? Always. Children of the Corn, Mangler, Lawnmower Man, Trucks, Graveyard Shift. Sometimes they come back. Always at the very bottom. And we're now at movie number 76. And I would dare say that almost all of those rank right there at the dregs.
Sometimes they come back, I think, is the best of a bad lot. I think that is not bad for what it was trying to be. But yeah, the rest of them, when I think of the worst Stephen King movie, I constantly go back to that Graveyard Shift.
Really? Wow. Mangler. All three of them are the worst. And I thought you'd be more supportive of Lawnmower Man.
Hey, it's a guilty pleasure, but I know it's bad.
Anyway, my point is, I liked Boogeyman. It was a good short story. It's the perfect kind of campfire tale of just like, you think he's safe. It's a man confessing to a horror that's already happened. My kids got killed. You think telling a therapist this is just a framework to talk about bad things happening in the past. Twist ending, big surprise, the therapist is the Boogeyman. It got me back then. I thought it was great.
I reviewed it on Books and Nachos. That review is still there. I did get through every single short story in the Night Shift collection and a little bit beyond. And it wasn't a bad one. It was kind of whatever. It was very short. And yeah, it did have a campfire tale. And Stephen King did love his twist endings, his O. Henry style endings in Night Shift.
And when you're a young reader getting into horror, that's exactly what you want. It wasn't too long. It had something I didn't anticipate. And yeah, it just kind of leaves you with this ghastly image of a therapist ripping off their face and killing their patient. It works on what it is, but a movie it ain't.
No.
If you're going to adapt it to the screen, you're going to have to really work hard. And they did. It should be said, we did review this once before as a Dollar Baby.
Yes, when we did the Night Shift collection review that had the original Children of the Corn Dollar Baby and the Boogeyman, and of course Frank Darabont's The Woman in the Room, I remember the Boogeyman being absolutely perfect for a Dollar Baby or an episode of Twilight Zone or something like that.
Yeah, under 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was even a little stretch at 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I went back and rewatched it and...
Same.
It's not great, but, it was what it was. It was a student film that largely followed the story, told the story of this man whose children kept dying by a mysterious monster in the closet that he could not see. And then, yes, in the end, it comes for him. How do you adapt that? I guess whatever it's going to be expanded. You're going to have to go beyond what the story did. You can't just kill 3 kids and have a guy on a couch talk about it.
I wondered. I saw they were making this movie, and knowing the short story, knowing the Dollar Baby, I wondered if you could do that and have it all told in retrospect and have the guy on the sofa for it, and each act a different child dies or something like that. So you could stretch it out that way, but the trailer was telling me this was going to be something very different. And that is the case with most of the Stephen King short stories is when you have to expand them to feature length, the movies very rarely resemble what Stephen King put on the page.
I'm shocked that you got anything from that trailer. Maybe because you had read the books, you're able to like compare things in your head. I saw this trailer, I'm like, oh, that looks like a generic horror movie to me. Like, I don't know what I'm getting, but I'm not excited about it based on the trailer.
I wouldn't have known this was coming out if it wasn't for Stewart and Now Playing. I saw no marketing for this. I only saw the trailers because we were doing this and I had to make some credits for this show. And so I had to go watch all the trailers and the clips and things. But this movie really flew under my radar. This weekend's all about Spider-Verse, right? Who's going to go see The Boogeyman?
Well, it's held its own. I looked up the box office and it looks like it took in 12 million, which normally I would say, oh, that seems like a solid take for a horror movie against, a superhero film in the middle of summer. But can you believe this movie? I had to deep research this. Could this be true? This movie cost $35 million?
No, laundering scheme, criminal activity.
Either that or that little glowy ball of light. I mean, that looked like something expensive that you'd find at Sharper Image, but I can't imagine that many millions.
Right, yeah, $35 million.
This is a $5 million movie. Come on.
Well, again, it has a cast of known people, but not stars, and a small cast, and a monster you can't see, and not that many sets. And they shot in New Orleans, which probably has good tax breaks. So again, did they go to the casino? Yeah, you do wonder how someone could spend this much money for that. That seems like a wild amount that they won't get back then. It almost guarantees that as solid an opening as 12 million is, they can't recoup that. Not when you consider it's got to make double what it costs. 70 million, not going to happen.
I don't know what the international grosses are on films like The Conjuring and its ilk, which is where I would throw this. But hey, anything they make on box office is gravy, right? This was meant for Hulu. I wasn't supposed to have to go to theaters twice this week. I was supposed to be able to boot up Disney's bastard child streaming service and be able to watch this in the comfort of my own home like Hellraiser. Like the latest Evil Dead film, somebody said, test audiences, I guess, said, no. This is a big screen movie. So the 12 million is 12 million they wouldn't have had if it went to Hulu.
Yeah, but you got to pay advertising dollars. And I mean, it's not like you get to go into movie theaters for free. There's a startup cost to that. But yes, you bring up an interesting point. I was tracking this movie for years, actually. I knew that it existed. It sat on a shelf and seemed fated to, like so many movies, like the Hellraiser sequel reboot we covered last year. Yeah, just throw it up on a Halloween weekend on a streaming service and you're done. That's all it was supposed to be. But yes, somewhere they had test screenings where the comic cards are so good, they felt like there's money here.
I want to see those receipts.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta see them. I want to know who thought this needed to be on the big screen.
I admit, it seems surprising now that I've seen the finished product, but also keep in mind, there have been other movies that exploded in the same way. You mentioned Evil Dead Rise. That was also destined for HBO Max, and they got like 70 million. So, Smile. There was a horror movie last year, kind of same premises.
It did a lot of money, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it ended up grossing 100 million, so you don't want to walk away from the table if you could make that. And if these throwaway movies suddenly were turning around wild profits, then maybe you bet on Boogeyman. Never count out Stephen King. But should you count on Rob Savage? Do either of you know this director?
Who? Nope.
Never heard of him.
Well, he's sort of getting a reputation. This is his third horror movie in a row. He got a lot of acclaim for a little movie called Host. He was able to shoot, I think it was the first movie out of the pandemic, horror movie, where they did it all on Zoom. They just had all the actors on Zoom and they had an online seance that goes bad.
Oh, okay, I have heard of this, yes.
I think I have too.
No thanks, though.
It's on Shudder. I went and found it just to see, and I'll say this, found footage, it's gimmicky. We've talked about the tropes. It's good enough for what that thing is. If you're not going to hold against it that it's a horror movie set on Zoom, it's better than Unfriended. How about that? Other movies have tried to do that online thing. he did a pretty good job with the restraints that were imposed by what they were doing. And he also made a movie about Dashcam. There's a white woman driving around.
When does his Ring movie come out? And I don't mean the girl crawling out of the well, but the doorbell.
Yeah, right. That's what it feels like. Yeah, here's a man that is happy to declare a TikTok video as a feature film. Yeah, Dashcam was a white woman driving around inventing raps about her anti-vax campaign.
Okay, this sounds good now.
It was strange. I kind of enjoyed it. She ends up stumbling onto, I don't know how to describe it, but people with telekinetic powers and zombies and things. I don't think either one of them make too much sense, but I think all that Rob Savage is demonstrating with his first two films is that he's effective with minimalism. He doesn't need to do much to shock you, creep you, and he pulls some kind of paranormal activity kind of jump scares that work reasonably well. And yeah, Dashcam, I don't think it's as celebrated because, again, I think some people were offended by the main character. I actually would advocate that's what kind of makes the movie interesting, is it takes this minority point of view and then goes in this weird direction that, I don't know. I would say that it's a plus that Rob Savage is here, having demonstrated he knows how to work with almost nothing, because we're going to find out that this is a horror movie monster that exists in the dark and maybe can't be seen.
Oh, couldn't be seen by me. I did go and see this in theaters, and, I live in a big city now, so I'm less likely just to blame bad projectors and old bulbs and things for bad movie experiences, but man, was this dark. Not that there were a lot of people in my theater to complain about it. I did go on a Tuesday night, again, into the Spider-Verse over the weekend, people. But on a Tuesday night, it was me and 6 of my closest strangers watching The Boogeyman.
Hey, I went the same day and time, and that's one more than I had. I think there's 5 of us. It was almost a private screening.
Okay, well, I did it twice. I went and saw it Thursday night after I saw Spider-Verse, which was a mistake because I was really tired. I knew I was in trouble. Yeah, and this movie particularly, I was nodding off, so I knew I had to go back. But also, I just want to say that I was having some extreme deja vu. I saw this movie and I'm like, I feel like I've seen this movie before.
You have, Stuart.
In between, I went and rewatched The Babadook, and then rewatched this again yesterday. And
you're taking all my thoughts. Like, yes, I was thinking all of this stuff while watching it.
We haven't covered Babadook. It seems like it's the most acclaimed horror movie of the last 10 years. But I will say this, there is a lot to talk about. I won't give you a review of Babadook, but I will bring up what I feel like thematically are important points that might be
just about everything.
Yeah, the short version is it's a story about a loved one that dies in a car crash. Their widow has a child that now starts seeing a childhood monster, a boogeyman, if you will, coming through the closet and starting to possess them. And yeah, it all ends in a basement. And yeah, I feel like imagery-wise and mood-wise, elevated horror-wise, Rob Savage really seemed to be tapping into what was done in that film.
I watched half of it and turned it off, so I didn't notice any thematic similarities. I'm glad you two are here to point them out.
Okay. So you only saw, Babadook twice, not this movie. You're prepared to talk about the whole Boogeyman because you got the plot.
Chris Messina plays Will Harper, a therapist struggling to cope with the recent death of his wife in a car accident. That left him a widower and single father to teenage daughter Sadie, played by Sophie Thatcher, and young daughter Sawyer, played by Vivian Lyra Blair. While all 3 Harpers are dealing with the emotions from the recent death in the family, Will gets a new patient also struggling with the grief brought about by the loss of a family member. This new patient, arriving unannounced, is Lester Billings, played by David Dastmalchian. Billings was a father of 3, and now all 3 children are dead by what was ruled accidental means. Still, some blame Billings for the deaths. As for himself, Billings blames an evil spirit, the Boogeyman. It's a creature averse to light that likes to hide primarily in closets, but also sometimes under beds. Left alone for a moment, Billings dies of an apparent suicide in one of the Harpers' closets. Now the creature has lashed itself onto the Harpers. It terrorizes young Sawyer, who already had a fear of the dark. Sadie also sees the dark creature and begins to investigate Billings' history, even going to Billings' house and meeting Billings' emotionally disturbed widow Rita, played by Marin Ireland. Finally, the Boogeyman attacks Sawyer, throwing the girl into a television. While Sawyer and her father go to the hospital, Sadie goes back to the Billings house, where Rita tries to use Sadie as bait to capture and kill the Boogeyman. Rita gets several bullets in the beast, but it lives and kills Rita while Sadie runs home. Reunited with her father and sister, Sadie has a final showdown with the Boogeyman. The two girls set the beast on fire and it dies, though it burns down the Harper's house in the process. Then in the aftermath, we see the entire Harper family going to grief therapy. After one session, Sadie is called back, seemingly by the Boogeyman, but she just closes a closet door, no further encounter with the beast, as credits roll.
As we start, they're going to give us the most violent death of the entire movie right here at the beginning. Little Annie in her crib. We're told later that it's pronounced SIDS, but I saw blood splatter.
Yeah, that is not SIDS.
I don't know how you get a SIDS, diagnosis out of that.
Is this the first of the three or the
Yeah.
third of the three deaths of the Billings?
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to be the first of the three, but I was wondering that because when they said SIDS later, it didn't make sense. So maybe it's metaphorical blood. It's elevated horror blood. It's not really there.
Yeah. Well, there's not much blood in this, but what we get here in this opening is, establishing what I would expect a monster in the closet movie to be. Like, little girl thinks she's safe, closet door starts to open, it talks in the voice of her dad, but we see these monster talons pulling on the bars of her crib, blood splatter, and through that we see the family that's going to be impacted. And then, yoink, we'll find out that this is not the family of the movie at all.
And this is kind of what I gathered from the trailers, is that I thought we'd see the short story.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the short story might actually happen, but knowing the short story and knowing that this movie was going to be about two young girls, I thought that this was going to be much like It Follows. It was going to be the short story as the origin of this beast, and it was going to follow on to a new family and expand upon King's original prose.
And I figured this was the family after that death in the opening. And so I'm trying to figure out everyone's relationships, who actually died, how many years later is this?
Yeah, well, David Dastmalchian is the father in that photo, and I recognize him. He's been in an extraordinary amount of recent Now Playing coverage, even though he's not a star. We're going to see him in The Demeter. He was Polka Dot Man. He tore his jaw off in one of those Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movies.
Yeah, he was in The Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you need a weirdo and a creep and Willem Dafoe is too old, go with this guy.
Yeah, he was even in 2 Ant-Man films.
You're right. There's his commercial one. He was part of the whole Thief crew. Yes, I know that he's not Chris Messina, and Chris Messina is, I suppose, positioned to be the next victim, the one that David Dastmalchian is going to pass his curse on to. We will see that this new family is also plagued with tragedy, cursed as it will, with a death in the family, a mom that has died in a totally unexplained auto accident that we never see it. We never know if anyone involved is responsible, or they all feel bad about it, but we don't really know anything about it.
Did you expect to? I mean, I just took that as a happenstance occurrence. I didn't think that the Boogeyman caused car accidents.
Well, no, but if your metaphor is going to be grief and you can't get over the death of a loved one, maybe the girls were fighting in the back and that caused the dad to get distracted while driving and the accident happened. So now they all feel guilty because of their involvement. Like, that would be an important element, I would think.
Yeah, just jumping ahead, this has elevated horror ambitions. This is not just a monster in the closet. It is every monster in the closet. It is a Jungian monster. We will have Chris Messina. He's a therapist working out of his home. His name is Will. We will have him quoting Carl Jung right here to a patient in the beginning, telling us this is our collective fears. We as human beings, since we lived in caves, have been afraid of this thing, which is why it will not take shape. It's kind of, amorphous in that it can change and be whatever the individual most fears. But yes, I would take that to mean that for this family, its fears are related to the guilt and the loss of a central component of this family unit. That not having the mom will make everyone blame themselves. And we kind of see that, but not knowing how she died, or, it doesn't sound like anybody was there, sort of takes away from the power of it.
Yeah, the father is later going to say that he wasn't where the accident was. He never had to answer any police questions or anything, so it's not like he was driving the car when she was dead. She was driving her own car and got hit and killed, and a tragic thing
it feels undeveloped. And I just want to add, this thing it went through several screenwriters. It started with a writing team that had penned Quiet Place, as well as a very recent Adam Driver versus Dinosaur movie called 65.
65, yeah.
Yeah, right. But it changed hands. The guy that wrote Black Swan, the woman that wrote Malignant, a lot of people took a crack at this. And I wonder if they just watered down this monster to the point that I find it difficult to talk about what it looks like, what its agenda is, what its whole mythology is.
Yeah, what it looks like is especially going to be a problem. That I can just put my thesis out right now is I hope you're not afraid of the dark, because that's all this movie is. If this was straight to Hulu, I'd have turned up the brightness on my screen, I think, so that I could actually see some stuff. This feels like a horribly underlit movie, which is being done for mood and for fear, but the end result is actually I'm having ocular strain as I'm trying to make out little reflections in completely black screens.
Yeah, and the director was very clear about that in interviews that he's given, is that like he was very strategic about how much he was going to show, and he did not want to give too much away. Because again, if this is the monster that we are all been fearing throughout humans' history, well, that represents so many different fears. So it can't look like one thing.
But a void is not scary. A dark closet...
No!
On the big screen is not scary. If you're a 5-year-old, the dark closet can be scary, but yeah, I need to see something in that closet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. I'll say this. It's a very ambitious thing to say that I'm going to scare you by not showing you. And that can be done for a while, but even in Jaws, they eventually had to show a mechanical shark. You know, eventually you can imply danger, but if you never show your monster, and this movie comes close to that, I think it's a struggle. But yes, you mentioned fears of the dark and the closets. That is what we see the youngest child, Sawyer, also known as Little Princess Leia, really struggling with.
And she does have the coolest gadget for a kid afraid of the dark ever, which is this glowing globe that is just perfect light on all sides. I'm like, how do you put batteries in that?
I disagree, and here's why. For someone that's afraid of the dark, they use the creepiest lighting throughout this film. That ball, when she rolls it, casts so many scary shadows, and I get it, this is a horror film. You want that, but it seems at odds if you're afraid of the dark. And then that blinking light later on, like, that's terrifying. Like, that's the worst lighting.
Yes.
You should be using.
Yeah, hold that thought, because that scene really did make me laugh. It's a real thing. You can buy these. At first, I was like, bullshit. There's no way. Where do you put the batteries? It didn't seem to have a place for that. But they're called moon balls, and I don't know if their lifespan is as long as the internal lights work, but you can buy spheres with no cords or seemingly batteries, and they will just be balls of light that you can sling around. Apparently, the director, because she is Leia in that Obi-Wan show, he toyed with the idea of her having a lightsaber, but that was shot down. But, you know, the other thing that's happening here, sound design. If you can't show it, imply it. There's gurgles, and it will learn how to speak in the voices of your loved one. So right from the start here, she's hearing her mom say, hey, and then later she'll be singing Irish lullabies to her like she used to when she was alive. So the boogeyman preys on you by making you think you're in the company of someone you love, but in fact, it's something with bad designs for you.
Yeah, is this boogeyman somewhat sentient? Because we're told later by, I believe it's Rita, that it likes to toy with its prey. It gets real joy out of toying with its prey, I guess, by singing these lullabies and that, which seems to have some kind of intelligence. I don't know.
It's a Freddy Krueger move, right? Freddy Krueger fed off the fear. That's why he didn't just kill people in the very first nightmare. He got stronger the more afraid they got. That's kind of how I took this one, is this beast fed on fear.
Yeah, I almost agree with that. I almost feel like he's more Taff-Cap. Like, if you remember New Nightmare, like...
Oh, yeah.
He's Hansel and Gretel's, like, you know, witch as well as Freddy or whatever. Like, that's what they're getting at here, is that, like, he has been around for centuries. And, yes, if your worst fear is Freddy, he'll come out in the sweater and the claw glove. But yes, we aren't to know. And again, I think what it enjoys, the only thing I can say about it definitively is yes, it seems to enjoy psychological torture. And the best that I can understand what it really is the personification and monstrification of depression. All of these people in this household are depressed about losing this mother, and how they're going to deal with it and wrestle with it in a monster movie frame is the ambition. But there's another daughter too, and I watch Yellowjackets, so I recognize Sophie Thatcher. Have you seen that show? Are you familiar with the Showtime show?
I have not watched that. I knew her from a movie called Prospect with Pedro Pascal. It's kind of a lo-fi, sci-fi film.
Okay. Yeah, she's pretty good. She plays young Juliette Lewis. It's sort of a Lord of the Flies premise. This girls' soccer team gets stranded in a plane crash in the wilderness for 2 years and turn into cannibals before they're rescued. And she's pretty intense. So, again, I don't know how many people watch that show or would recognize her, but good casting overall. I will just say, as a compliment to this movie, they have gone with strong actors in all the parts. Chris Messina and his 2 daughters are all very convincing in their grief.
And Sophie Thatcher, also from the Star Wars universe. She was in Book of Boba Fett for a few episodes.
Oof. Is anyone watching that?
Yeah, I watched it.
Okay.
Was she one of the ones on the space Vespas? She must have been.
Here she is making the stand that she is not going to let her mom's memory go. And so that means wearing a very unfashionable orange dress to school where the meanest girl I've ever seen on screen. You gotta love, like, the real monster in this movie is Natalie. Blonde Natalie, who, like, knows that this woman just lost her mother and is not only going to go up and make fun of her about wearing this dress, but is going to laugh when she shoves her into the brown bag lunch that mom packed a month ago that's been like mildewing in her locker, and it splatters all over her dress.
Is that what splatters on the dress? I couldn't figure out what got on that dress.
Yeah. She opens her locker and realizes, oh, there was the lunch that mom packed, the last thing that she ever gave me. And she looks inside and it's all gross and all of that. And this girl shoves her. They get into like a I'm gonna beat you up match. And like the girl laughs at her for splattering all that mold all over her. And this is her friend. I want to clarify, later she's invited to a party.
Yeah, that's the weird part.
Well, we're going to find out they're not really friends. What happens is there is a girl, Bethany, who was always friends with Sadie, and Bethany got into the cool girl clique, you know? And so it's a friend of a friend, but Sadie isn't really in the clique.
The crazy thing is they get in a fight because she's like, I don't want to move on from my mom's death. And like they get super upset. They're like, no 6 steps of grieving. You are getting over it now.
That's gonna be Natalie's like, maybe you don't want to weird people out then. I was like, oh my God, it's been a month. Jesus Christ. Again, the real evil of this movie. I wish this were a movie about Natalie just going around and harassing other girls, because it would be hilarious and terrifying, really. But this sends, yes, because she has all this mold on her, Sadie's going to go home at a very pivotal time when her father is seeing a new client that just so happens to be David Dastmalchian, the father who not only lost Annie in the first scene, but we will find out in his introductory session and his final session that his other 2 children died within the same year. And this is really the short story. If you read The King's Story and liked it, this scene is where you're going to get the bulk of what King wrote.
But what King wrote was a short story about a man confessing, it seemed, to 3 murders and blaming it on this alternate persona of the Boogeyman. And that would be in theme with several of the Night Shift stories. There was one called Strawberry Spring, which was also about, spoiler alert, a murderer who doesn't realize he's a murderer and blames it on somebody else. And so here, the way it was told is you think it's a man in a psychiatrist's office saying the Boogeyman killed his kids, but come on, really, this guy killed his kids. And then, oops, you find out at the very end, it was the psychiatrist was the Boogeyman all along. So here, they don't really draw out the horror of the death of the 3 children. You know, if you see that dollar baby, you get that actor monologuing this entire horror of the 3 children and how they were killed and how he found their bodies and how they shouted Boogeyman right before they died. And you don't get that here. The way it's played, it's almost glossed over. And other than paying homage to the Stephen King short story so he doesn't sue them like he did with Lawnmower Man, I don't really see what Lester Billings showing up does to bring the monster to this house.
Well, that's my question. Does he show up on purpose? Because why show up now at this time? Like, has he gone through every shrink in the town and it's Will's turn? Or is he like, does him and his wife go through the obituaries and they're like, oh, they recently lost a loved one. Maybe we could pass on this Boogeyman to them.
Like It Follows.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting you frame it that way.
Or Smile.
Yeah, It Follows. I was thinking The Grudge or The Ring or any of those kinds of
yes
curse movies where, yes, you are suddenly have to get rid of this thing. You have 7 days or whatever before it kills you. And so how do you get someone gullible and in your position to take it? You know, it's hot potato. You take the monster. No, you take the monster. And so, yes, is that what this has become? I think that's unfortunate. I want to just say it's unfortunate because it was was a good Stephen King short story, and they're essentially not using it. You're right. It almost doesn't matter that this Lester is the one that comes to this household, because they're already in grief. He doesn't do anything to make them in grief. It's presumed that they would be attacked by a boogeyman anyway, because boogeyman goes wherever people are suffering.
And if the boogeyman is specifically a child killer, which it should be, I mean, that's what the short story is. If you think about who's afraid of the boogeyman, it's children, then presumably it's going to kill Lester Billings here, right? Lester Billings doesn't really kill himself. He goes into a closet and the boogeyman kills him, right?
That's my assumption.
Yeah, this is where this really gets, again, 2 viewings. I don't know how to interpret this. So, yeah, did he have to unload this onto a shrink before it got him? You know, he comes in, he's looking at the closet, and Chris Messina is like, do you want to hang up your coat? He's like, no, close the door. He acts like a man that is on borrowed time, but they don't really go into that. I'm wondering if that wasn't a version, that wasn't someone's script that got rewritten in the flurry of screenwriters that came in and out of this project. But it feels like if that was the idea, it has been greatly minimized in the final edit. And yes, I agree. Like, the boogeyman should be going specifically after kids. And it should imply that Will, Chris Messina's character, and having been exposed to this, is now going to become the boogeyman to his 2 daughters, right? Like, he's going to be the one to get them because David Dastmalchian believes that he is blamed for doing this, and maybe he did do this, so that's what he's passing along, is that Will, in his psychological despair, will end up hurting the 2 daughters that he loves.
That's what I thought it was implying is, yes, they would die in the film, and it would be Will, the dad, trying to find this monster to prove his innocence.
Unfortunately, Stuart spoiled something for me. He did tell me he saw this movie, and his words were, "No one dies." So I knew that these girls were safe the whole movie, and so I didn't have that thought that the boogeyman was going to kill them and the father would be blamed. But that would have been a better way to go with this movie.
I mean, that's what they're kind of setting up with Lester.
Yeah, again, I wonder if it wasn't someone's conception of the script to make it about Will. And then they were like, no, teenagers like horror movies. We have to make the daughters the main protagonist. And so poor Chris Messina will disappear after this scene as well.
Yeah, as soon as I realized that Sadie and Sawyer are the main characters here, really Sadie, I'm like, oh, did I just walk into a PG-13 horror film? And for sure, it was PG-13. I did not know that going in, but teenage girl is your protagonist. Probably PG-13. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying.
Not necessarily, though. I mean, I've seen R-rated horror movies with teenagers as the protagonist. Scream, you know.
Yeah, in the 2020s, in this millennium, probably PG-13, though.
Well, yes, this movie will end up being very tame in terms of violence, and I think it is, more importantly, just courting. It has a disinterest in, which is strange, because the story was all about, you know, the therapist, and I feel like Will could provide so much information, but they end up having it that this is a character who can't talk to his girls, who can't talk about his sadness about losing his wife, and so consequently, he is always turning his back as the children are in danger. And yeah, he's never really accused of hurting his wife or these girls. And you wonder, again, Chris Messina is not an A-list star, but I recognized him. I've seen him in lots of things. Why would he do this? Why would he want to be cameoing in this way?
Because they have a $35 million budget, so maybe they overpaid him.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing at this point. So Sadie comes home, and you guys help me out with this, because I really don't understand how this all transpires. We know that Will is downstairs calling the cops because his new client creeps him out. And we know that the new client knows there's a monster that's going to come out of the closet and get him or something. And there's a closet right there in the therapy room. Why does he go upstairs to look at Sadie while she washes the dress? And why? I guess because her trauma is connected to her mom. It decides that he has to die in mom's studio closet.
I thought that was the boogeyman that trashed the art studio with the family portrait that she was working on. Was that Lester?
I thought that had to be the boogeyman, right?
That's what I assumed, yeah.
But aren't we to imply that this all could be Lester and no boogeyman? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know how to read this movie. But we see him. I mean, there's shots of him walking upstairs and looking creepy and watching her as she's doing laundry. And then, yeah, she hears sounds, sees paint coming out from underneath her mom's studio. Her mom was a painter, apparently. And so the first scenes of the movie was her rifling through mom's closet for that dress. She's going to go back in there. Dad's going to come running in, and they're both going to find out that this guy hung himself there instead of doing it downstairs. And that's because the boogeyman knows this closet is connected with the mom.
To the mom, right? Yeah.
Who it wants to exploit.
That would be my assumption.
But it's not like the boogeyman used Lester's children's voices to lure him into this specific closet.
Right.
Lester was just coming across as super creepy and continued coming across as super creepy as he just wandered through this therapist's house uninvited and creeping on the therapist's teenage daughter.
Yeah, it would have made more sense, like, we're told about this black mold if he would have spotted that and was following it around the house and it led to that room, something. Otherwise, I don't know what to make of what Lester does here or why he does it.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to not have the information of the story and think that this is a creepy guy that kills kids and is going to kill Sadie. But once it is revealed that he hung himself, I'm constantly thinking back for the rest of the movie going, what did his death have to do with anything? And it truly feels disconnected in ways that don't serve this movie.
Again, I took it as him being there brought the monster. The monster killed him and stayed there in the house and now is going to kill whoever lives in that house, starting with the kids.
But only because there's a dead mom. Like, I don't think the boogeyman stays if there's nothing to grieve.
But there was no grief. Oh, the boogeyman didn't kill the SIDS kid? No, we saw the boogeyman killed the SIDS kid.
See, I thought the SIDS kid died from SIDS, and then that let the boogeyman in.
That is what is said in the therapy session, which leads me to believe that somebody rewrote that. That what I hear sometimes in this movie is, out of tragedy, the boogeyman comes calling. He sees an opportunity, if some family is grieving, to then prey upon that and exploit that. But yes, in this case, Boogeyman is the first to show up and call the grief. For all we know, he caused the car accident that killed the mom. We just don't even know.
That would be stupid.
Well, it is stupid. I mean, I think this movie is severely hurt by not clarifying. It's one thing to be ambiguous and artsy and elevated. It's another thing just not to bother. And I feel like this movie often is just not telling us anything. And yeah, it's extremely frustrating. But yes, one thing we know is it killed the first kid. And yes, now seems to decide it's going to live here in this house and not kill these kids. And I want to point out too, it was talking in the closet before David Dastmalchian got there. So you tell me.
I can't. I think that's what we've concluded.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I can say is there's the cool camera effect where Sawyer is looking for the boogeyman and they do this cool camera flip move as she's looking under the bed, and
it is the one cool camera shot in the film. One shot.
Yeah, that camera shot right there makes the inexplicable hunt for the boogeyman kind of worth it.
Right. No, in little moments, like the trailer, for example, you believe that this is really interesting to think that in the shadows, never to be fully revealed, because if you shine a light on it, it won't be there. But that this is literally darkness personified coming for you. How they play with that. Yeah, I agree that moment where it's under the bed, good moment. And then why doesn't it kill the child? Why does she go walking over to her sister's room and they pull her tooth?
Well, that is explained by Rita later. Again, like Jacob said, the boogeyman likes to play with his food.
Yeah, okay, all right. Maybe too much. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to go ahead and get there. This whole movie, no one else dies.
No.
There's no other, this is not about killing or exacerbating the tragedy. David Dastmalchian lost all 3 of his children. Neither one of these children will ever become victim.
What's worse than no one dying is just there's very few scares. Like, unless you want to count that tooth getting pulled out, and some kids might, find that terrifying. It might hurt a bit. But, if you're not going to have lots of blood, you could still do scares. Referencing Smile, it's a movie of just jump scares, but they're pretty good ones. It's not that creative, but they have good jump scares in it. And this does not even have that.
A great point worth bringing up. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just be a generic horror movie. Yeah, it's great if you can elevate, innovate, do something new, and God knows there's pretensions here, again, to show a universal representation of monstrousness in all its forms. Okay, good luck with that. Or yes, you could just have a couple good jump scare moments, and this is about the only one, right? A lot of the times, I did struggle staying awake in this movie both times.
It was hard.
I had a late show on Thursday, and then on Tuesday, I I went to the noon show, and I'm telling you, even then, there's something about the sound design and the darkness and the boredom that after a while, I'm not sleepy, so why am I nodding off? Like, there's something about this movie that, like, the Boogeyman's supposed to make you stay up at night, but in this one, he's the Sandman.
The thought did cross my mind. I'm like, there's only like 5 other people here. I could pull up my phone and hit Reddit for a little bit. Like, it was a struggle.
It is really a movie where nothing happens. And you tell me what the budget is, Stuart, and I'm shocked because my feeling is, especially with so many scenes of Sadie wandering around the house and wandering around her school and sitting in the bathroom of her school, I'm like, there's so few sets here. There's so few people here. Jacob, when you said there's 5 people, I thought you meant on screen. I wasn't even thinking in your theater.
No, there's usually only like 2 people on screen.
Yeah, it's like there's nobody here. And as you mentioned, Stuart, there are these mean girls there who should just be meat for the Boogeyman, right?
The Boogeyman should eat them, yes.
We want it? Yes, exactly. They're perfect for this. But, like, again, the director, the interviews that I read with him, he was very much about, like, I don't want body count. I don't want gore for gore's sake. Psychological elevated. He had all his cast watch Ordinary People to prepare for this. That was his thinking, is that I'm making a drama about loss. And the fact that it's a horror movie is an afterthought.
And I know he goes for that. There are those moments where it's Will and Sadie like sitting down talking about their mom. Like, this director really wants us to hit, and it's boring me even more.
And speaking of ordinary people, I mean, a big theme of Ordinary People is the main character seeing his therapist. Here, I really think we're going to get something because the 2 little girls are in grief therapy with this Dr. Weller. And she has a weird look to her. She's got these glasses on her. She's kind of mean to the little girl in that the best way to handle your fear of the dark is to face it. So we're going to turn off all the lights or use this glowing cube.
Creepiest light ever. I'm scared of the dark now after that light.
Yeah, that's exactly why it's so funny. The scene is hysterical because this is exactly what you would do to scare someone, which is what they are hoping to do, is having a blinking red light turn this whole room into, like, yeah, you're seeing monsters come out of the shadows. Who wouldn't with this lighting scheme? This is not how you do exposure therapy. This is a technique. I mean, this is cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah, this is like jumping in full force of like, oh, you're scared of heights, then, you know, like shoving them out the window of the Sears Tower is the plan there. No, you don't do that to a little child that tells you, I'm afraid of the dark.
But I'm certain, because I've read the short story and I remember that the therapist was the monster. I'm like, oh, Dr. Weller's the monster. This is going to be the twist.
Right, yeah, I was holding on to that as well, is that we know it can't be Will. Their father is not going to be the monster, unfortunately, although they could have gone that route. But yes, that we have this other therapist who has the trappings of being someone kindly, but it looks menacing at every turn. You definitely are thinking that, at least by the end, when they have the end scene, that will be some kind of twist. But no, this is just a bad therapist who thinks that turning on blinking red lights is going to solve the problem. But yes, what does happen in this movie? I struggled to find the structure, but Act 2 is about moving from Sawyer. You know, I feel like all the early scenes are about the little girl in peril. She, you know, loses her glow ball. It rolls it down the hall and it gets crushed. And lots of scenes of her cowering in the dark. Will Sadie believe her? Sadie has this one moment in the kitchen where she sees 2 pinpoint lights, and maybe those are eyes. She opens the fridge and it's not there. She decides to investigate, and we have her rustling through the trash of her dad's office and finding the address of the Billings family. And yeah, her one pity friend drives her to this house where those previous murders happened so she can get some answers.
Did you guys catch the Stephen King Easter egg? The Billings address, I don't know what street they were on, but they were at 217, the room from The Shining.
No, I didn't, but good job. Yep.
You did it. Successful.
Mm-hmm. What makes me crack up is she goes into this house and her friend rightfully is texting her, are you buying drugs? Because that's the only thing you can imagine happening in a house like this.
That mailbox is like bent in half.
It's So many unopened letters. But she goes upstairs. I would be worried about like burning alive. There are so many candles.
Yes.
All over the floor. I get you want light, but what do you got against batteries? Who puts this many open flames in their house is just asking to die?
Well, they have construction lights too.
Did they stop working so they don't have power to the house?
No, there are those halogen lights, those like construction lights that Sadie is shining and then starts to rotate through that house. They have electricity. They have bright lights.
So you just turn on all the lights. Problem solved.
Yeah, right. What game is this? There are light fixtures all over this house. This is a modern house. Turn on the switch and stop this candle bullshit.
Like, here's the thing. They're going to tell us light keeps the monster away. So turn on all the lights. Buy an eye mask. Can the boogeyman climb into an eye mask into that dark space and get you? I don't think so. That's stretching it. Wear an eye mask. Block out that light. Keep all the lights on. Boom. Done. No problem. Movie over.
It's killing me. Later on, we're going to see Sawyer is playing PlayStation in the dark. She's afraid of the dark. Turn on that light switch.
I want him to turn on the lights because, again, I'm falling asleep. I'm like, if I don't have something to stimulate my eyes, that it's all going to be darkness. But yes, this is where she meets the widow, and this is a new character. The short story was only about Lester, but also in that photo was Rita. She was mother to the 3 dead kids, and now she's lost her husband. What is she doing with her days? Well, she's set up some kind of Polaroid Instamatic to take pictures. I think she's hoping to capture this. She has the idea that she can photograph this like the Loch Ness Monster. And so it's dark, but you open the closet real fast and maybe the flash will catch it behind you. They have a little moment like that. And yeah, she's got a shotgun ready. She tells Sadie at one point, I see it right behind you. Does she? It's not confirmed by the camera work. Maybe this woman is crazy, or maybe in fact she has been, eating her carrots and living in low light levels that she can actually see what we cannot.
And when you're talking about a Jungian monster, like this fear of everything, it's weird to think that could just be shot with a shotgun. Like, okay, Freddy, you could bring him into the physical world and then you could kill him. But I don't know, the boogeyman, it just seems weird that the solution was a shotgun.
Right. I don't think that Rita's very smart. I'll go ahead and say I really don't think that this is a good plan.
I think she's had a lot of trauma. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt.
Fair, yes. She's not thinking clearly. Again, all these candles, I get you want light. You do not want open flame like this all over a house with drapes and rotted wood. And there's also some kind of, is it graffiti? Is it drawings? I feel like it just looks like the Babadook children's book, but there is all these veins running through the ceilings.
I thought that was mold.
It might be.
Yeah, they say there's a black mold that's growing throughout the house, and you see it growing throughout Will's house as well.
That's mold?
They say it's mold.
And with the amount of housekeeping this lady does, I definitely think mold is a possibility, whether or not it's related to the boogeyman.
Yeah. Why is that? Because what does that mean? What does that represent? That's the rot that happens when you live in darkness and fear and don't go into the light?
Or, yeah, you want to stay stuck in the same psychological place and don't want to move on, and it starts to corrupt you. It's very Psych 101.
Yeah, it feels very obvious. I'll just go ahead and say that, like, elevated horror, most horror movies have a metaphor or playing with symbolism. That doesn't get you elevated to be able to say, well, I'm personifying depression and grief and all of that. Like, yeah, no shit. I mean, most horror movies kind of play off of that. What would make it elevated in my book, the way that I define elevated horror is, it works just as well, in this case, as a drama as it would a horror movie. I don't need it to have jump scares because what it is doing dramatically is so good that it works in an elevated way. It is elevated outside.
Like that one Children of the Corn film you like.
I mean, like in air quotes, for a Children of the Corn film. But yes, I do feel like that's what the standard, and I don't feel like this dramatically is interesting. I think you have good actors sitting around moping in low light levels, not doing a whole lot. And dramatically, that's boring as hell.
Agreed. It's really killing me how much time they're spending following Sadie, watching videotapes and doing all of this. And I really roll my eyes when they just decide to forget the boogeyman and Sadie's going to throw a party to reconnect with her friends.
Well, yeah, she doesn't do that. That's more like done to her. Bethany is like, I feel bad for you. And so, again, I'm going to invite all these girls that hate you and have literally smeared rotten food on you and called you out. We're all going to hang out. And that's going to go well. Again, I'm hoping that this is the point where bodies start dropping. But I don't know. By this point, we're really late in the movie. I feel like it's an hour in. I don't have the expectation at this point that anyone's going to die, right?
Again, you spoiled it for me that nobody was, but I did wonder when these friends came over if a way to go would have been that Sadie starts killing them all, because there was this moment, kind of like The Grudge or something, where it's a dream sequence where Sadie confronts the boogeyman and it jumps in her mouth and nose and things, and I'm like, is she becoming possessed? Is she going to be the boogeyman now? And so I thought it could be a way to go that she starts going after these frenemies.
Yeah, that's what happens in Babadook. I don't know if you got that far into the movie, Arnie, but for a while, it's about a single mother who's got this terror of a child.
That kid is the scariest thing in that film. When he cries and screams, oh my God.
Yeah, he is the reason to be fearful. But yes, she's struggling to parent this child that's been kicked out of school and is violent and hurt other kids and all of that. What's going on with him? And then the twist is it seems to leave him and go into her. That would be the obvious thing to do. At this point, this movie is begging for something to change. We have had too many scenes of people huddled in the dark. We now need to have Boogeyman personified. And it would be good if it's in a character that Sawyer trusts, right? Like her older sister suddenly attacking her after she's been coddling her and singing to her. That would help this movie escalate to something. But yeah, it's a weird moment where, yeah, she comes home, yells at her little sister, slams the door busts down, and a big, like, venom kind of ball of goo goes into her mouth, and she wakes up coughing, and I don't know what the hell that meant. What does that mean?
The string with the tooth was put in her mouth at that point, I guess, because she's going to cough that up in a little bit.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know what it means. They're desperate. They know, oh, wait, we got to have some scare. This is PG-13. We want teenagers to see this. We got to do something scary, but it's not scary.
I don't think it's the PG-13. I've seen PG-13 movies that can make this work. Smile, you know.
I agree.
You can do a creepy smile and that will get you some mileage. I feel like it's their concept itself. By saying we can never see this monster, they've had one moment where, like, early on, Lester came in and said, my son drew it. And then they don't even show us that page. For it takes a long time. It takes the daughter finding the notebook where that drawing was made, taking a pencil and etching over the page that was underneath it. And we can kind of see that it looks like a spider, maybe, or like the monsters from Quiet Place, which the screenwriters wrote. But it hurts this movie that they cannot show us a monster by this point. There's been too much implied and not enough actual threat.
Yeah, the climax should be all monster. If they're going to wait this long, all monster for the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And again, they have this highfalutin idea that you never can see it because shining light on it will make it go away. So again, sound design and weird dreams like this are all we're going to get.
Yeah, I think you're onto something with them wanting this to be elevated horror, because even at this point, when all the friends come over, they're going to smoke some pot, and the dad's going to use that as an excuse for the monster. Oh, you were high, so how do you know this really happened?
Right.
Like, that feels like an elevated horror thing where you want that ambiguity. Is it in the person's head, or is it actually... But at this point, who cares? Just show us the monster and the film.
Right, yeah. And again, if this is trying to actually get to grief, if it's ordinary people and how people get over a death, well, they actually have talk and they, you know, like dramatically things happen in that movie, Arnie implied, with the therapist and all of that. There are ways of making that happen, but you still have to have things happen. And this movie is like depressed itself. It's just like sitting there in the dark going, oh, I can't be bothered to scare you or do anything. I'm just going to sit here and gurgle. I'm like, okay, this is depressing.
And I chalked this all up to budget. I chalked this all up to streaming budget.
$35 million.
$35 million will buy you at least 2 Evil Dead Rises.
Yeah, for a horror film, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm. It's too much for this movie where, yeah, the friends end up storming out. They lock Sadie in the closet where Lester died.
Don't you want to debate that? Was the closet really locked or was it the boogeyman? Yeah, who cares? At this point, I'm so annoyed. I want something to happen so badly that, yeah, I guess I'll make do with, the sister playing PlayStation in the dark and then getting slapped around by something that throws her in the TV set. And she has to go to the hospital.
Yeah, take that, poltergeist. These poltergeists are going to throw you into a television.
For real, as I'm watching this, because I'm like, I got a list of like 30 other movies this is cribbing from. I'm like, oh, is she going into the TV? Are they just going to straight up do Poltergeist? I thought they might.
Yeah. Again, it feels more Paranormal Activity. And again, the earlier Rob Savage movies have all been about watching characters kind of yanked backwards into the dark and all of that. I feel like he really loved that series or drew inspiration from it because, these are all things that you can imagine being in a found footage movie. Like, it's not one. It's not a stationary camera that they've set up. No one actually tries to see the monster except for Rita, and it's a Polaroid. I'm not going to get real lights with batteries, and I'm not going to get real photographic equipment. I'm going to get a Polaroid and a bunch of candles and try to capture the face of evil.
And evil doesn't just like to play with its food. It doesn't just want to scare you. It's going to abuse you a little bit by cutting you up, by having you smashed into a television before it decides to kill you like it does to Sawyer here.
Yeah, or was this just the bait to get Sadie on her own? Because now that, Dad doesn't just believe she's smoking too much pot and the sister is in the hospital, she goes back to Rita, who tries to use her as bait. And they have another scene in the Billings house that, I don't know, what happened? They end up shooting water pipes and it, blows out all the candles.
Yeah, the thing was, all right, this makes no sense, and the more I've thought about it, the more it hurts my head. But the boogeyman isn't after Rita, it's only after Sawyer and Sadie now, but Rita still sees it around her house. Maybe Rita's gone nuts, Rita's paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
But Rita now knows that Sadie is a target for the boogeyman. So by getting Sadie over there and then tying her with a zip strip to exposed beam, she hopes that they can get the boogeyman to come and trip some tripwires that are automatically going to shoot bullets and kill the boogeyman.
Here's the thing, if this was a garbage horror movie where we got to this like in the second act about this crazy woman abducting this child because she thinks there's a monster and we get shotguns and booby traps, like I'm down. I'm all there for it. Sounds trashy. Sounds fun. At this point, it's so late in the game. And it feels weird because so much of this has been about father-daughter talks about dead moms. And now we get, this weird, crazy booby trap scene.
Right. I think it's supposed to represent the paranoia. Like this woman is supposed to be what happens when you live in the dark too long and don't come out and get counseling. I feel like this whole movie's solution for the boogeyman is lots and lots of CBT from bad therapists that are going to traumatize you with red lights. But anyway, let's get to the end here. So, yes, it doesn't work. Long story short, Rita dies, maybe?
I think so. That's what I took it as.
Yeah. At any rate, the plan goes sideways. Sadie will later say it bleeds, and if it bleeds, you can kill it, making me think.
Because someone saw Predator.
Yes, exactly. Like they're grabbing onto every horror movie trope. But I didn't see it bleed.
I barely saw it, so...
Yeah,
I agree. Like, I feel like, again, it's angering that we are to take these people's word for things and not being shown it. It's not a radio play, it's a movie. But this is the premise that, like, you'll never see it. And then her dad calls and says, oh, yeah, your sister got discharged. We're at home. If the monster's there at the Billings house, how is it also at her house?
Well, it is supernatural. I mean, it's not like it's walking down the street to go back and forth to Rita.
It bleeds. It has a circular system, like...
Yeah, this is what I mean about rules and, like, mythology and all that. So the boogeyman is in every closet? It's every monster under the bed? Like, what? I feel like those aspirations are really shooting this movie in the foot here.
I just picture it going, I'm every monster. It's all in me.
Yeah, not bad. Except that would make you laugh, and this movie is not going to make you laugh. At least not intentionally.
But Sadie races home, and they're going to go in the basement and fight the boogeyman in a scene. Stuart, you saw it twice. I feel like I didn't see it at all because it was so dark. But there is a weird-ass scene that freaked me out where it's the boogeyman is attacking Sadie. And then out of what I think is the boogeyman's mouth comes this like birthing of a adult who I'm like, I can't tell who this is, but there's human arms and a human head coming out of the boogeyman. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, well, I can't tell who this is, but this obviously is Dr. Weller, right? That's coming out of the boogeyman.
You're still holding on to that. Yeah. No, or is it the mom? Or is it, just...
I figured the mom, yeah.
Yeah, keep in mind that all the mom's things have been moved to the basement. So she's like the ghost that happens to, reside down there. That Dad was trying to get rid of all the things that made him feel bad. And the compromise is we'll label it in the basement as mom's things. And so...
Go see the Babadook. The basement's a big deal at the end.
I know, again, so much about this. And yet things happen in that movie and characters change, which is, I'm sorry, any movie needs that. You can't just stay stagnant. Yes. You can't dramatize depression by being depressed in your storytelling. But yeah, this is minimalism to the point of almost doing nothing. But yes, this is why I saw the movie twice. Because by this point, I walked out and I looked at my notes and I'm like, I don't know what I saw. And I don't know, like I didn't write anything down and I was nodding off so much, I was sure I had missed something major. All I can say is that yes, the creature seems to be hatching something human that is sucking out the black goo that was in her in the dream, which to me would be like a good thing, right? Like it's not in you anymore.
So is this the mother fighting the boogeyman?
Well, okay, so that definitely happens.
This part's crazy, guys.
Yeah, that definitely happens because we had an early scene of Sadie watching an internet video with the woman from Host. I mentioned that was about an online seance. Recall, same universe, that woman has done a YouTube video and says every time you hold up a candle, your loved one is there and they'll let you know by bending the flame sideways. And so mom smoked pot when no one was looking. They have her lighter. It's bending sideways so that it can turn. Well, help me out with this. So the younger sister is running around spraying like spray paint like it was mace. And because they just happen to cross swords there and the aerosol crosses the candle flame, it's now a blowtorch.
Well, I mean, that would work. I did that as a kid.
Yeah, that happens with any aerosol in a match.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying the contrivance of suddenly they realize that as the monster's attacking them, about to kill them. Oh, hey.
I mean, look, Stuart, their defense against this monster is to wear Christmas lights, which don't give off a lot of light. Like, again, just turn your lights on, get a flashlight.
How about turning on the basement lights? I agree, it's maddening.
Cell phones have very bright flashlights. Like, use that.
Yeah, none of this makes any goddamn sense. It has to be because maybe the rationale is we have to be in the dark in order to kill it, because it won't come if it's brightly lit. But I would just rather live in bright light, right? Why try to kill something when I can just have an illuminated house?
But I figured out when the gunshots didn't work that fire would be the way to kill it because fire is light from which it can't escape if it gets burned, if it gets caught on fire. So here, it's the flamethrower trick. The aerosol can runs out of aerosol. So the little girl's going to grab some paint thinner and splash it on this monster. And then they're going to throw down a match and burn down their own house.
I love when that mom makes that flame huge. Like, I cracked up out loud at that point.
Yeah, you're to really understand it, it's the mom from beyond the grave, kind of like Signs or whatever. Keep swinging, baby. We'll kill the aliens by putting all this water around. Yeah, it's just really hokey. And what is it really trying to say? The way to get over a depressive episode is to burn everything connected with the person you lost? No.
Because that's what they do. All of her stuff burns in that basement at the end. That shocked me. I thought this was you reconcile and you come to accept things, but you don't have to destroy it all. No. You have to destroy it all, according to this film.
Yeah, no. How about just going for a walk in the daylight? Like, I really don't think you need to send the message that people, in order to get over something, have to burn it out of their life.
Yeah, get some of that natural, vitamin E, vitamin D, whatever you get from the sun.
Yeah, go for a jog. There's lots of things. But yeah, burning down your house, not recommended.
I did laugh out loud when I saw the house burn down. It's like they didn't have a single fire extinguisher to put out the boogeyman. The whole house has to go. And I'm presuming the boogeyman is not dead.
He's still alive because ultimately he is supernatural.
Oh, I think that's the point of the final scene, is that we will see that everybody is in therapy, including Dad, who had been dragging his heels. Even though he is a therapist, he doesn't want to take his own advice. He did want to sit down with Dr. Weller, but he's going to open up in front of his girls about his fears of parenting and admit that when he goes, "Oh, that sucked," it was like a collective, "Yep." Yep, I don't know what you're referring to, but I agree. It sucked. But yeah, the point is, again, we think that they're going to do what the short story did. But what the messaging to me is, my takeaway is, the boogeyman is calling to her, and it can't be gotten rid of, but she can manage it. She can just close that closet. She doesn't have to go into the darkness. She doesn't have to ruminate. She can just talk to her therapist, close that closet door when they're finished, and go on about her day.
Well, let's close this closet door and go about our day. But first, we have to, Jacob, Stewart, do you recommend The Boogeyman? Jacob.
We're going to play this game. I don't want to keep our listeners in the dark. Look, Stuart, you kind of stepped all over my final thoughts of this right at the beginning. I thought maybe it was only I that I was seeing this. Babadook, The Night House, Smile, The Ring, any of these films where they personify grief or trauma and emotion, and that becomes the monster and you got to work through that. Like, I have seen this film 100 times before. I've seen much better versions of this film. Like, there is no reason to have to watch this one when there are better versions out there. And I know sometimes we try to treat every movie like its own island. You can't with this one. It cribs from everything. If you've watched the majority of horror films over the last 20 years, you've seen this film. Like, Smile was PG-13 and did it so much better. There's no excuse, for this being PG-13 not to work. This cast seems to be into the film. Like, they're not bad, but I gotta blame, I guess, the writers. Like, there's not a whole lot here. Maybe The Boogeyman should not be an hour and a half. Maybe it should not be even 45 minutes. Get it down to under 30 minutes. Maybe that's the only way it will work as King wrote it, but this does not work. It's dark. Couldn't see a whole lot of it. And there's nothing original here. That was the biggest problem, is like, I watch Kung Fu films, I watch action films, they repeat a lot of the same stuff, but they'll have a stunt piece, they'll have something that feels new. Nothing here. This is, sometimes the asses are masses. Screw you, test audiences that said this needs to go to the big screen. No, this belongs on Hulu and then watched on your phone, the smallest screen. Not recommend.
Yeah, but even if you watch it on your phone, don't fool yourself. If you think, I can't see anything on my phone, I need to watch this bigger so I can see something, you still can't see it.
You still won't see it.
Yeah.
Stewart.
Yeah, you can say this is an adaptation of Stephen King's Boogeyman, and it certainly feels like a short story stretched out to feature length, but I would pick another King title and call this Dr. Sleep, because you cannot stay awake during this listless, poorly photographed 90-minute movie. Like, it's amazing, like, how narcotic it was. Like, again, midday, I went back and watched this and it was like, I know I need to stay awake because I need to know what happens in the end. And I was fighting it. Every step I was like, oh God. It was like the Ludwiko experiment I was doing to myself, like holding my eyes open with my fingers to try and take in something by my optics.
Ironically, watching this film with your eyes closed or open is pretty much the same experience.
I concur. It's a radio play that every now and then has some pretty good actors sulking around in the dark. I mean, I feel bad for them because it's really not their fault. They seem equipped for the dramatics. You're right. It's the writing of this. Like, don't take this narcotic quality as a indication that Boogeyman is elevated in some way. No, you're just watching people struggle to find a movie. They've been told that they've got to do drama, and they're given nothing to work with. And it's just this listless, pointless, simplistic, underdeveloped, inconsistent. Like, there's no rules for this Boogeyman. And so, the story of Lester and what happens to him feels totally unrelated to what comes later. And more interesting, frankly. Like, we're not served by focusing on the Harpers over the billing. And while we're told Boogeyman, he prides himself on being able to imitate the voices of your loved ones, these filmmakers do not have that gift of mimicry. As Jacob says, they are imitating Babadook, Nightmare on Elm Street, Signs, every movie you've seen before, and not capturing any of the terror. Like, not a whit of it. This movie is the opposite of scary. It will suck it out of you. Again, you would just be fighting not to go to sleep. Terrible. Yeah, I don't know why this thing wasn't spared a streaming death. It certainly deserves one. The Dollar Baby from 40 years ago is about as good as this. So, not recommended for anything other than a substitute for NyQuil. If you're allergic to that like medicine, then put on this movie.
Yeah, Stuart, I agree with a couple of things you said there. First of all, I rewatched The Dollar Baby and actually enjoy it more. It's more faithful to King's original prose, and I think it's just a better story overall than this amorphous blob of a monster and a story. But I do want to give this film a couple of very brief backhanded compliments.
Okay, as long as they're backhanded.
Yeah.
This is better made than most of the Night Shift movies. The production quality here, some of the cinematography, when you can see it, which is about half the movie.
Rare.
It looks better and more professional, and the actors do very well in their job. I mean, it is hard for me to empathize with children on screen, and yet little Sawyer here, I did not mind her. I actually liked her better here than I did in Obi-Wan. I did not like little Princess Leia. I liked Sawyer.
Oh, not good there.
So there are some good things in here, and when you're comparing it to Sometimes They Come Back, which looks cheap as hell, or Graveyard Shift, which there they show the monster and they never should have. I mean, Maximum Overdrive, some of these just absolute dog shit movies. Mm-hmm. This one is better than some of those.
Some of them, not all of them, some.
About most of them. I'll side with Arnie, but what are you really saying? Is that a compliment to this movie or a damning of the Stephen King retrospective?
So it's a not recommend, but it could have been worse. I don't know that it could have been more dull.
I agree. Yeah, that is the sin of this movie. It's in that range of super boring but professionally made Stephen King, which is better than half. I keep a ranking. It's kind of hard to do. With 76 films, where does this piece of shit fit in with the others? Can be hard to know, but I rank this number 37 between Johnny Depp's Secret Window and Cujo, where you got professional actors doing an okay job, but sitting around doing nothing. And that's what this felt like. Professionally made boredom.
Well, this director wants to do another Stephen King that you could put on your list, and King has seconded this. He endorses this. I mean, King, he did some promos for The Boogeyman. He has talked up The Boogeyman personally, and now the question is, will Rob Savage take on a big screen adaptation of The Langoliers?
Sure, why not?
The Langoliers. Oh, that makes sense, though, because, again, those were amorphous time-eating monsters. How do you dramatize it? How do you show that? He won't. Spoiler alert. He'll have fun not showing us what's going on in that story. Oh, I get why he would be attracted to that material. I'm not sure that story, which I liked, ever would make a good cinematic experience. But you bring up an interesting point that probably does explain why we are reviewing this in a movie theater. Stephen King himself likes this movie. He championed it. He said, you were crazy. He wrote to Hulu or whoever and said, you're crazy if you let this one slip away.
Maybe because they overpaid for the rights, which explains the budget again.
I'm thinking actually all these rights were locked up a long time ago from Night Shift, and that's why they keep cranking them out. It's the new stuff that you need to pay King a lot of money for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like Dolan's Cadillac.
That's when I want to shell out my hard-earned money for.
Woof. That one's on the low end. Yeah, this is much better than that. But, we're closing the book on Night Shift again. Who knows for how long. But we aren't done with King. By the end of summer, we're going to put out the next one. We're going in chronological order of book release. And so that means that we will get to a big one. Up for Best Picture, Tom Hanks, Green Mile.
Haven't seen it since theaters and never read the book.
Me too.
But I am starting to read the book now so that I'm ready by August and looking forward to revisiting Darabont's second Stephen King prison film.
Yeah, I hated Shawshank Redemption, so I never even bothered, but...
You recommended it.
I came around a little bit in that I can recognize that what it did was... I don't know. I probably shouldn't have recommended it because I don't really like the film, but I know why people do like the film. How about that?
And what's weird is this gets lumped in there with Shawshank because they are both prison films by Stephen King, even though this is very different.
Yeah, we'll see how different. I'm curious to know. I know that the book, when it was serialized in a magazine, got a lot of acclaim. And so I'm interested in reading that and, seeing if this is going to be one of the good ones or just another terrible, terrible entry in a long-running series that still has about 25 more to go. We've still got, a long time before we're done with the Stephen King retrospective. And however bad it is, is, it won't be probably as bad as Transformers, which is what we're covering on Tuesday.
Hey, this one's getting better reviews than most of the Transformers movies.
What does that mean, though? Like, when everything's shit, like, what flavor of shit do you want to put in your mouth? Come on.
We liked Bumblebee.
No, you did.
You liked it.
I hated it. But yes, to me, every Transformers movie has been bad. But maybe, just maybe, this one won't be as bad. To be determined. I haven't seen it yet. Just the previews alone, I'm dumbfounded that the robots are now monkeys and birds and animals. I don't even know what they're doing at this point.
Robots in disguise as animals. I mean...
I can't wait till they're buildings.
A robot can disguise itself as a car. A robot cannot disguise itself as a giant metal gorilla. I'm going to know that's a robot.
Well, we're covering that this Tuesday. And then after that, we're starting our gold donation series with a bunch of shark films. 12 years ago, Stuart Brock and I covered Jaws, and now we're covering a lot of Jaws legacy sequels, Open Water, The Reef, 47 Meters Down, a lot of shark movies. If you are a $25 or more donor or patron. And, this is a bonus Now Playing free show on Friday. But again, just because this show comes out for free on Friday doesn't mean these shows are free for us to make.
We had to buy a theater ticket for this shit film.
2 of them, in fact.
Yeah, but admittedly, I went on Tuesday when it was half price tickets. I only had to pay $6. But we do have to pay editors and web designers and a lot of expenses with this show. And we would greatly appreciate your support if you could help us to keep going and keep podcasting strong. You can find details at nowplayingpodcast.com/donate.
And it should be a lot of fun, too. I'm looking forward to getting back into the water and seeing if they've made a great shark movie since Jaws, or even Deep Blue Sea, which I liked. So we're going to cover that, in this retrospective, starting next Friday with Open Water.
So Jacob Stewart, thank you for joining me. Listeners, thank you for joining us. And that's a good place to end for today.
Okay, monster check complete.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Now Playing. We hope you've enjoyed the show.
There's no such thing as monsters. You need to grow up!
In the NowPlayingPodcast.com archives, you can find many more reviews of Stephen King films, including Sometimes They Come Back, The Lawnmower Man, Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, Children of the Corn, and more.
When there are scary things we don't understand, sometimes the best thing to do is to face it.
Come back to NowPlayingPodcast.com each week for another new movie review.
It's not real.
In our archives are also reviews of film series such as The Avengers, Star Trek, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Scream, Transformers, and RoboCop. Find hundreds of movie review podcasts at NowPlayingPodcast.com.
I'm serious, Sawyer.
Support from listeners like you help keep Now Playing operating. You can find a link to donate using PayPal at the bottom of our website, NowPlayingPodcast.com. You can also join the Now Playing Patron campaign. Patrons of $10 or more get a new exclusive movie review every month, plus even more perks, including one where you can pick a movie for our hosts to review. Find the details on our website.
So this light is going to be completely solid like it is right now. Then gradually, it's going to start flashing until it's totally dark. So you can see that there's nothing to be afraid of.
Now Playing Podcast is produced and edited by Arnie Carvalho.
I felt like I could sense him watching over me sometimes.
Associate produced by Jason.
You're both having these manifestations.
Now Playing credit narration by Brock.
What are you scared of?
The opinions expressed on Now Playing are those of the individual hosts and may not reflect the opinion of Venganza Media Incorporated.
You believe me, don't you?
Venganza Media Incorporated is not affiliated with the motion pictures reviewed or otherwise referred to herein. All movie clips and music included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review and no infringement is intended. Now Playing Podcast is an exclusive trademark of Venganza Media Incorporated and may not be used without the expressed written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated. Now Playing is a Venganza Media production, copyright 2023, and no part of this show may be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without the written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated.
Let's take a deep breath and relax. Let go of all your fears. There's no reason to be afraid.
And this is the co-host who's been known to eat too much pizza and throw up in the ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese, Jacob.
Yeah, I know. I saw that on Instagram last week, Jacob. What were you doing?
I don't even know if it's too much of their pizza. It's just the quality of their pizza that makes me throw up.
Have you been to a Chuck E. Cheese? Their video games are shit these days, too. It's like a child casino.
It's not even an arcade anymore. Yeah. It's all about the tickets.
But we're not here to review Chuck E. Cheese. We haven't covered Babadook. It seems like it's the most acclaimed horror movie of the last 10 years.
And it's Pride Month. Babadook's a gay icon now, so...
Really?
We could do it in June, yes. Because Netflix accidentally labeled it as an LGBT film, and so the gay community just accepted him as a gay icon.
Okay, because I was straining there. I was like, boy, watching that didn't seem clear to me.